the Iran protests, of course, have become a thing in Canada, and there have been some major protests and rallies in Canada. Let's listen to what happened on
hundreds of thousands of people protested against the terrorist regime in Iran. Here in Canada, we're among the biggest protests, but the Prime Minister didn't have the guts to show up because he didn't want to have to explain why he has failed to criminalize the IRGC, the terrorist arm of the Iranian government, which killed over 50 Canadians when it attacked a civilian aircraft. Will the Prime Minister have the guts to stand in today and announce he's banning this terrorist organization?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety. We condemn in the most unequivocal terms the tragic killing of Mahsa Amini, and we stand with the women, her family, and her supporters at this very difficult time. And there needs to be consequences for everyone who was responsible for that killing, and indeed all of the transgressions of human rights in Iran, which is why there are tangible consequences, including just last week, the Minister of Global Affairs listing the morality piece as one of those parties that will be sanctioned. We will continue to explore all options when it comes to holding those responsible and defending human rights here and around the world.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
We don't need symbolic sanctions. We need real action against this terrorist organization, and we need it now. The Minister says he's still exploring. This terrorist organization murdered over 50 Canadians by shooting down a civilian aircraft over 2 years ago. This government promised they would ban that terrorist organization not long after that. They still haven't done it. It is perfectly legal for that group to raise money, organize logistics on Canadian soil after it killed our people. What kind of Prime Minister fails to stand up for his own citizens after they've been murdered? Why won't he stand in his place today and ban this group?
The Honourable.
All right, so that's the end of the segment there. I think Poilievre makes a point there. I mean, Canada looks incredibly weak. I think this government is trying to look like it's doing something when it doesn't really want to. What do you make of this? To me, it's Poilievre who looks good. I mean, he stood there making a speech in front of thousands, tens of thousands of people on the weekend. This was in Richmond Hill, I believe. Yeah. And there's a lot of votes out there, Daniel. And I think Poilievre scored a ton of points from a lot of people who might have voted for Justin Trudeau in the past, but after that no-show, might be rethinking their decision. What do you think?
No, I think you're absolutely right. It's 50,000 plus people in Richmond Hill. It's quite massive. It's also important to note that the current Liberal MP of Richmond Hill is Majid Johari, who many people have accused of being basically an agent of the Islamic Republic of Iran. If you don't know his story, he was just a random nobody in Canada, went back to Iran, joined the Iranian National Bank. That's where he made a lot of his money. Again, it's a totalitarian regime, so you don't get into the Iranian National Bank in a high-ranking position unless you're connected. Comes back to Canada with the money to become an MP, then becomes an MP. While the Iranian parliament is under sanction in the Harper years, he met with Iranian MPs from the Iran government in his house, exchanged gifts in secret. He has been named in foreign media by defectors from the Iranian intelligence as an asset of the IRGC in Canada. So he holds the Liberal seat in Richmond Hill. He showed up to the protest halfway through, tried to slink in. He was pointed out by one of the leaders of the protest and was booed, and the crowd started yelling shame at him. So the Liberals are in trouble of losing some swing ridings in the GTA over this because the Iranian diaspora community has sort of woken up on this issue. And the other thing is, not only has the Trudeau government looked weak, they have been incredibly weak. And not only have they done nothing, they have actively enabled the Iranian government and the Islamic Republic, the IRGC, to murder Canadians. They did nothing after Syed.
How did they do that? How have they actively enabled that sort of activity? I mean, that's
you
stunning.
have to understand that the Middle East is not Canada. Diversity is not our strength in the Middle East. Strength is strength, and weakness is weakness. So there are no powwows about feelings inside the Tehran government. So when Kayed Safasamani went to Iran, he was just a random sociology professor who went back with his wife to Iran. The Iranian government kidnapped him and murdered him in prison and kept his wife hostage. This was in response to Trudeau saying good things about the Iranians and trying to open up the embassy. Because when you do this to a totalitarian regime, when you start to say, oh, we're going to try and normalize be friends, they say, oh, weakness. So their thing isn't like, let's keep this going. It's like, what can we get away with? They've started to push the boundaries of what can get away with. And they learned the first round, they can murder a Canadian and nothing bad happens, right? And then you had Justin Trudeau in 2018 agree to a conservative motion to list the IRGC, which is what Poilievre is talking about, as a foreign terrorist organization, and they have not done anything on that. So when push came to shove in 2020 and the Iranians and the IRGC needed to murder a bunch of civilians to make a point about Trump, the Americans on flight PS-752 were removed from the flight beforehand. They took the Americans and didn't let them board the flight before they sent to the air and intentionally shot it down.
Wow.
And yes, it's been ruled a intentional act of terrorism by the Superior Court of Ontario.
So they figured that we could kill Canadians and they will do nothing about it, but if we take out Americans, then we're in trouble. The Iranians must have something on Justin Trudeau. Pictures of him with somebody. Let's listen a little bit to this rally on the weekend.
یک بار دیگه با صدای بلند
خواسته
خودمون رو اعلام می‌کنیم. We ask you to urge Canadian government to designate IRGC as an FTL. همه با هم. We are over 6,000 people here. IRGC terrorists! Must be on the list! IRGC terrorists! Must be on the list! IRGC terrorists! Must be on the list! اولش هم خودت بگو همه با هم. IRGC terrorists! Must be on the list! 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 IRGC terrorists!
I mean, Daniel, it's very troubling that our government wouldn't declare this organization a terrorist. What are they waiting for? Wouldn't this be a no-brainer?
It would if they had a moral compass, but the Iran issue is probably the biggest proof where the moral derangement of the Trudeau administration is. So it's important to note his brother Alexandre did work for the Iranians when he made documentaries for Press TV, which is their foreign language propaganda channel funded by the regime. It was banned in the UK for airing the tortured confessions and forced confessions of political prisoners. So that's Press TV, where Trudeau's brother used to work. Now, it gets worse than this, because after the Superior Court ruled that the IRGC enacted an intentional act of terrorism, shooting down Flight 752, some of the families tried to take the IRGC to court in Canada because the Trudeau government has not followed up on their promise to take this matter to the International Criminal Court. They tried to find the Iranian government guilty in absentia. Now, the Iranian government never responded to any of this. So what happened is the Trudeau government actually stepped in, and I was there in the courtroom. The Trudeau government used our tax dollars to defend the IRGC in court and try and run out the clock and argue against a ruling in abstention. It was absurd. It was absolutely absurd. So it's not only that they haven't taken the action to declare them a foreign terrorist organization, it's not only that they haven't followed through on the promises to take them to the ICC, it is that they are actively defending them in Canadian courts. So the more
this is bizarre. Like, okay, so what do they have on these liberals? Obviously, it all stems from money, right?
Yeah, I mean,
how much Iranian money has gone into the coffers of the Liberal Party of Canada, and specifically Justin Trudeau himself? I mean,
well, again, his brother we do know his brother took money from them. He was an employee of the Iranian government when he worked at Press TV, making documentaries for them. Again, he does have Majid Johari, who has very strong ties to the regime, made his money in the Iranian banking sector, where you do not get in unless you are connected, hosted Iranian MPs at his house and exchanged gifts in secret, which was against the rules back then, has been photographed and in the same place as many hardline Iranian Islamist supporters. So there are people. It's also, I think, an ideological thing, where there's the total ideological failing of the Trudeau foreign policy sector, which is terrorism exists because the West is mean, so I can be less mean and I can hug the terrorism away. This sort of narcissism dressed up as masochism that defines the modern left on this issue. So that, and the fact that, yes, billions of dollars is flowing in, and Canada is one of the money laundering capitals of the world, and we have tons of money coming in from regime-linked supporters.
Yeah, I think the Liberals have a tremendous amount of discomfort around this. And it probably speaks to the fact that they have ties to the, potentially very embarrassing ties to the Iranians that will probably come out if they turn on Iran. If they say, okay, we're going to designate this group a terrorist organization, we're going to get tough on these Iranians and the regime, all of a sudden stuff's going to leak out to media that will not necessarily be in a mood to protect them. I mean, we're talking about outside media or organizations like the National Telegraph. Because
I'll point out to make your thing, just because the IRGC has two branches: the Quds Force, which is their international, already a terrorist organization. That's what Soleimani led. And then there's a domestic force. We want the entire thing designated an FTO because the Iranian IRGC, which is like their paramilitary, it's not the army, it's like the SS, an ideological hardline army. They control over 50% of the Iranian economy. So this would actually do a lot of good to stop Iranian money laundering, because all the businesses connected to the IRGC, they would then have trouble laundering money internationally. We'd actually have a mechanism to shut it down. And what you're seeing is the liberals refusing to turn off this $1 billion money laundering valve into the country.